Hey, everybody, it is Trags, Mike Petralia, back with another episode of the JungleRoar podcast. And I didn't think we'd be 0-2, so I am back with somebody who I think has all the answers. That's Butch Hobson, Geoff Hobson of Bengals.com to discuss the Bengals 0-2 start, their 20-17 last second loss to the Dallas Cowboys. Butch, how you doing?
Trags, how are you? It was good to see you last night at a very good Red Sox.
Yeah, before we talk some football, let's get that out of the way.
Thanks.
I think everybody knows, certainly by the fact that you're wearing the hat you're wearing, that it's a special week in the Hobson household. You actually get to see your hometown nine, the Boston Red Sox, come to Cincinnati and play against the Cincinnati Reds. I joined you last night and in your seats, and it was a blast. The Reds fell short. The Red Sox exhibited what they should have been exhibiting. I'm sure you will attest all year long. Timely power and solid pitching and a clutch bullpen effort in the end. Those things we have not said all year about the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, they were still throwing underhand out of the bullpen there at the end. Couldn't find the plate, and it was that almost seems to be an automatic now. Is no matter what the score is, the winning run comes to the plate, no matter what the score is. So they get that. But Raffy, I went to see I was going to see. I wanted to see Bogaerts playing his last game, and the last time I'll probably see Bogaerts in a Red Sox uni. And I wanted to see Raffy continue his obliterating all of Tony Conigliaro's young slugging records. And I got to see both. Bogey scored a run. Raffy won the game with a bomb, and now it's on to the Jets, and let's win there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And JD Martinez, by the way, with a big night. He also knocked Nick Senzel out of the game with a drive to deep center field, an RBI triple early on in that game. And boy, I don't know about you. I could hear Senzel hitting the outfield wall from my seat. It was a loud thud, to use a football term.
Yeah. Well, they reminded me of another center fielder going against the wall in a Red Sox game, the great Fred Lynn. And you had me, you one up me last night, Trags, with your hat. Your hat, of course, has the 75 World Championship logo.
Right up there on the far left of my bookshelf. That is the hat I wore last night to the game, and those were happier times for Reds fans, to be sure. But I think there's a bright future for that franchise. Don't know about the Red Sox. I really don't.
Right. But, when would you have thought that? When would you have said that?
That's exactly true. But the thing is, the Red Sox can fix all of their problems with cash.
Yep.
Reds, not so much. They've got to be more patient. All right, on to football. That's why people are actually, I think, watching this podcast and what happened. Let's first of all do a quick postmortem of what happened with the Cowboys game. Bengals, again, offensively looked very poor. They couldn't protect Joe Burrow, and I think Joe Burrow looks very uncomfortable in the pocket.
Can't get the ball downfield. That's their game, the big plays, and for whatever reason, they are not getting I think the longest pass play they got this year is 24 yards, and that's not them, and I thought it was interesting what Brian Callahan said on Monday, Trags. He talked about how, you're not coming up with any new plays. There's a balance, there's a balance, new plays, but you've also got to go to you also have to go, you have to have standbys. You have to go to the well for the plays that you practice and are invested in, and so I don't see them ripping up stuff, but they've got to get that long ball going. And, there's only one way to do it is you got to give them time. And so, I mean, it's pretty simple, isn't it?
So here's my attitude on that, Butch. Yeah. It's not so much about the X's and O's, but the Jimmys and Joes. And I know it's a football cliche. What I mean by that is the offensive line has to start beating the hell out of people. They are not exerting their will. And to me, football at any level, high school, college, or pro, is about exerting your will over the opponent. First two games, the Bengals have not been able to do that. And they better find a way to do that, or it doesn't matter what plays Brian Callahan is dialing up. They have got to win at the line of scrimmage. And offensively, they have not looked good at the line of scrimmage. And to me, I've always believed this, Butch. That starts with a power running game, getting the running game going in some way, shape, or fashion.
Yeah, you know me, Trags. I'm an old school guy. I go back to Sam Bam Cunningham. So
Yep.
but something too about this team that's amazing to me. They are never out of it. You know, the toughest
I think that's a
assignment.
dangerous tightrope act
Well,
to
yes, it is. It is.
walk.
But I mean, I'm continually amazed since Burrow's been in the chair. And I know this because I writing a game story for a Burrow team is impossible
Yes,
because
correct.
it seems like everything happens in the last 6 minutes.
Yes.
It just can you imagine what they do with a good first half? I mean, because this guy, I mean, because it's man, I mean, it's been just when you sit back and I was thinking about this after we talked actually, and I was thinking about all his near fourth quarter, and you're right, you can't walk that tightrope. You have to win. You got to win a lot. You got to win a lot of games by 10 points. You know, but he just has this knack to keep them in games. I mean, and you think back last year, same thing. They won a game on the last play of overtime, and they won a game on the last play of regulation in September. Now they've done that in the first 2 weeks. So, but they did the same thing, but they've lost them instead of won them. So, obviously, which just goes to show you how close. What if it had been reversed last year, this year? So I mean,
So here's my thinking. And how many times have we heard Joe Burrow say this? I've spent like he spends the first quarter figuring out what this game is going to be and what they're going to show him.
right.
I think that needs to stop. And I think I'm going to try to ask Burrow this week, or even Zach, or whoever in the locker room offensively. It's time to stop reacting, and it's time to start dictating the terms of what you're trying to do. And I think the successful teams are able to dictate what they're going to do in the game plan. And then if the team answers it, you counter it. That I understand. But the idea of sitting back, waiting to see what they're going to show you, I think the Bengals have been burned by that offensively in the first two games. And I didn't write this in my column for CLNS today, but they have to start dictating the tempo right out of the chute in the first quarter, or they're going to continually fall behind.
Something I'll say, and I think in their defense, I think you have to say the score has not been with them. And right away against Pittsburgh, they were down after Burrow's first
Right.
throw. They were down,
Right.
and they were down right away after that first drive. So they use the term complementary football. They have not had it, and I think a lot of this stuff I think is dictated by, my God, it seems like they've been down by double digits the whole year. And I think that really cuts into your playbook. I think these guys are just pinning their ears back. These guys they're coming after Joe. I mean, that's just and the score. I think the score has exasperated that. I'm not sure I pronounced that right, Trags, but I'm not a
Exacerbated.
I'm not a
Exacerbated.
broadcast. I could spell it after a spell check.
They are exasperated by their exasperate.
That's easy for you to say.
Yeah,
that's easy for you to say. But
they
what I'm
are
saying,
exasperated.
But what I'm saying, it's the score. I think once they get into a game where it's where they can score first, I think the whole thing is different. I mean, that. I mean, in this league, it's almost the game's almost as dictated as much by the first 8 minutes as it is by the last 8 minutes.
But my whole thing there, Butch, is at some point they have got to come out and punch the other team in the mouth. They can't sit back and wonder, okay, how are they going to come at us, be passive about it, and then respond. I would throw that out the window yesterday, that attitude, that approach. They have to come out and punch the other team in the mouth, and you do that by running the ball, getting physical. And the one thing that I did write, Butch, is they have to find a way to engage Lael Collins, their right tackle. And to me, the best way to do that is just tell Lil L, find two guys off the snap and hit them, pound them into the ground, and we're going to run Mixon right behind you. And that lets Lel Collins know, okay, Mixon's behind me. He's counting on me. I got to get engaged here with the blocking schemes.
I want this recorded and dispersed to all Bengals media members, particularly Daner, who is always accusing me of being the old man wanting to run the ball. So I would like this this dissertation distributed.
So,
to the Bengals
and I
media.
know a few others on the beat who are like, it's a pass first league. You've got to pass to win. Well, no kidding. You have to pass to win. But to be able to pass to win, you've got to protect the quarterback. And if teams are just saying, okay, we know you're going to pass 80% of the time. Well, if that's the case, they're going to be like, okay, we'll rush and do everything we can to pin our ears back and get to the quarterback. And if we get beat on a couple of plays, we'll play Tampa 2 and we'll give you a 20-yard gain every once in a while. Great. We don't care, because you're not going to score in the red zone. And how poor have they been in the red zone this year, Butch? They've been very bad again. And that's, again, another trend that is carried over from last year.
I think, I think a lot of it too is, I think the offensive line. I think a lot of it is, the offensive line hasn't been together that long. They signed these guys in March. They really haven't played together since the Rams scrimmage. Right. That's no excuse, but I think the red zone's a factor. I think here's something else too, kind of a big picture view. I get the red zone stuff but I'm wondering too, and I think you saw this up close with Belichick for all those years. He was a guy that almost took September as a kind of as a lab.
He did.
And so I think, the plays that aren't working now or aren't timed up, they're going to be working in October and November. I myself personally, I think, because I think that's a little bit what happened last year. I think they really didn't get rolling. And I think this is a trend throughout the league too, because of the work rules. These guys are not on the field like they were even 5 years ago. The 2020s are a lot different than the 2010s when it comes to preparing for a season. So I get it 0-2 when everybody wants to jump off the rolling. But I think this 0-2 isn't your father's 0-2, I think I might say. It's not even your big brother's 0-2.
So, and there is an extra game, and we tend to forget that there are 17 games, not 16 games. That is a big deal.
Yep.
But I would tell you about those Belichick teams. The only Belichick team to start 0-2 was back in 2001. That team did win the Super Bowl. They came from behind, that season, inspired by 9/11 and whatnot, and finished 11-5. But that means they won 11 of their final 14 games. Right. Is this team capable of doing that? I think so. I think they certainly have the talent on the roster. Nobody's saying that. I'm just telling you, Butch, and it's one of my pet peeves. Football is still a physical game won in the trenches. And all you have to do to realize that is watch how Burrow has been beat up and has been pushed off his spot, as they say in football terms and quarterbacking terms. Burrow has been pushed off the spot constantly and is not able to dictate the terms down the field. And for the Bengals to correct that, it's not about so much the scheme, the passing schemes, as it is you've got to make the defenses concerned about, well, if we rush and they throw to the place we're vacating, or we run a successful draw or 2 or 3, they're going to gash us for 30 or 40 yards. That's what the Bengals have to start doing to get these teams to back off a little bit.
So let me ask you this. What if they win the toss this week?
I thought that it's funny. I was driving to Great American Ballpark on Tuesday night, getting ready to take in the Red Sox and meet my good friend, Geoff Hobson. And I thought, if they do win the toss, is there some urgency to take the ball this time and not defer and march down the field and get a lead? I think that thought's crossed their mind. If it's crossed our mind, it's crossed their mind. that maybe we take the ball this time, put it in Joe's hand and say, go down and get us some points.
Yeah. And they're going to score. And that drive, that 19 play drive or whatever it was,
19 plays,
yeah.
1983. It was a great year. Sixers and Dr.
graduated?
J swept the Lakers in the NBA Finals. What?
You didn't graduate from high school that year. You graduated
1 year
in
later.
84,
1 year
right?
later, I did. That's correct.
Here's
From
that
Indiana.
drive, though. You saw how good the Burrow's wide receivers are, which made me think, they're going to bust out here at some point because I don't know how they can cover these guys, and Tyler Boyd ran the route. He ran the route of the day in the on the 2-point conversion.
Yes.
That was a big league route, man.
Great point.
That's a and Jamar is just I know Jamar by Jamar's standards, he had a pedestrian day, but like and this is happening to Trey Hendrickson on the Trey Hendrickson is getting doubled and tripled. I mean, I think you were out there on the last snap. I mean, they are sending everybody at Trey Hendrickson, and it's the same thing with Jamar. I mean, he was doubled. He's doubled. He's been doubled ever since the season started. He's still got. So I'm just amazed at I was just thinking about that as you were running through it, and about maybe taking the ball. Maybe they do take the ball. I mean, I maybe get the ball when it's nothing, and see what happens. Because at some point you just can't cover all these guys, and at some point they're going to bust out. Of course, it's the question is when, how, and it usually takes. It's like it takes. I was thinking about this too. I was thinking about that playoff run, and it kind of started. It started with Baltimore, and it really that the big 525-yard day, and it kind of snowballed, And does it take one play? Does it take one game? I don't know. I think it happens. And when does it happen? It's got to happen. It's got to happen now. You can't. Running out of time. But I'm amazed at the offensive firepower they have, and how do they unleash it?
Okay, let me throw another possibility out there at you.
Yeah.
Up tempo, go no huddle, go up tempo, and from the get go, and see if that can kickstart him. Because one thing you want to do, not only you want to win the line of scrimmage physically, you want to win those physical battles. You also want to keep a defense on its heels. And one way to do that, if you can execute, and I believe in Burrow's ability ultimately, and at a very high level to execute, is to speed up the defense, get them allow them not to set into positions so they feel as comfortable. You got to get the defenses, Butch, feeling as uncomfortable as Burrow and the offensive line feel right now.
I think they tried to do that. I mean, I think they tried to do that against Dallas. They tried to up tempo. They just didn't get into a rhythm. They just didn't get into a rhythm. A couple penalties, a sack, and a lot of rhythm. But they did try to hurry up.
They tried it, but they got to try it and execute well.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, here's a guy. I remember, and not to cut you off, but you talk about the no huddle. The key guy, and this goes way back for Bengals fans, but they get it. Rodney Holman, I thought, was
a boomer. Yep.
The guy that never came off the field. So who is this version of Rodney Holman? It's not a tight end, but it's probably Joe Mixon. Because he's so good at lining up as a receiver, and lining up in the backfield. And so, they've got the versatility. That's what those great no huddle teams had, which is what you need. You need versatility, guys that can,
the Bengals certainly have that. I would think offensively they, and certainly
the only thing is, what's the sample? We're going to find out about Drew Sample. I think we'll probably see Asiasi is probably going to make his Bengals debut, I would bet,
right,
in New York, because I'm not sure what Drew Sample's situation is. It didn't look good with the knee. We still waiting word on that, but so now they're down to two. Now they're down to two tight ends. So what's that mean too? So, but I don't know. They tried. It looks to me like they tried a lot. They kind of emptied their. They went heavy a lot. They used Dante Smith as an extra lineman. So I mean, they're trying to find something, and I would imagine that we'll probably get the whole thing on Sunday.
All right. Let's talk about, we're here with Geoff Hobson of Bengals.com, does a great job covering the Bengals. And before we move on to something else I want to cover in terms of the team, you had a great story here, and I want to bring it up. Cincy Joe against Jersey Joe. Jets quarterback Joe Flacco, writes Geoff Hobson of Bengals.com, who makes his 21st start against the Bengals Sunday in New York, has been around so long. Did you know this, Butch? I think you did because you wrote it.
Yeah.
Has been around so long that his NFL debut came on the 100th birthday of Paul Brown and in a game between the Bengals founders' two teams. The date, September 7th, 2008 in Baltimore, a 17-10 Ravens win. So welcome back, Joe Flacco. You interested in seeing Flacco this Sunday and how he looks?
Oh, because you can always find him. You know where he's going to be. Not exactly mobile. Bengals have had good success against him. Of course, it doesn't. All that stuff is. It's apples and oranges because it's different defenses and different coordinators and different players. But it was Sam Hubbard had his first NFL sack against them, and Jesse Bates had his first NFL interception against them. So. He's not unfamiliar to these guys, and he's obviously dangerous, as he showed in the final 155 on Sunday. He's got a Super Bowl MVP in his pocket, but this may be exactly what the pass rush needs. You're going to find you'll be able to get to Joe Flacco.
So why have the Bengals had such terrible luck in New York? You realize how many times they've won in the Meadowlands, not just MetLife, but across the parking lot in where a former ill repute may or may not be buried. Won't name the name. I want to keep this podcast still going, as a matter of fact. But even across the parking lot at Meadowland at Giant Stadium, they never won.
No, the only one I don't know. I mean, the only time I remember them winning is the 9/11 game in 2016 with AJ and Andy.
And they barely hung on to win that game.
They had to fend off Fitzy. It seems like they had to fend off Fitzy at the end. But no, you're exactly right, Trag. What is it about New York? That's the only two times I remember the Fitzy fending off Fitzy, and then the great 81 game on the way to the Super Bowl.
31-30, as a matter of fact, second week of the year.
The headsets went out, and Lindy Infante was hanging off the press box, giving the hand signals to Kenny Anderson.
I did not know that. Is that true?
That's what they said. That's what Kenny says. And the U.S. Open, that was the great story, the great lap story about how the offensive line almost didn't get there because the cab driver took him to, or the guy who took the guy who ran the hotel van took him to Yankee Stadium instead of Shea Stadium. I mean, this is before the Meadowlands. This is going back to the Meadowlands. So yeah, I don't know. It is perplexing. Because they've gone down. I mean, as you know, Trags, they've gone down there with a hell of a lot better teams than the Giants and Jets in many years.
And last year they had that game won, and I think Bengal fans, still that's sticks in their craw a little bit, blowing an 11-point lead, 31-20 with whatever 4:25 to go in the game, and they couldn't hold on to the lead.
No, it was that's one, that going into this year, you're thinking, well, they've lived that. They're not going to give any away like that. Well, they haven't had a lead to blow, but I think that I think they grew up a little bit that day too, because I think they used that game. Yes. I mean, that was they came back. If you remember, the next week they came back. They got hammered by the Browns the next week. And went into the bye, and they seem to kind of get their. They seem to kind of steady themselves. Different situation now, different point in the season, but I think what this schedule has the same cadence as last year. Game on the road this week, and then boom, quick week Thursday night at home, which is great. A Thursday night home game is a gift.
So I don't know about you, but when I was in that locker room, Bengals locker room on Sunday in Dallas, I got the sense for the first time that frustration was starting to creep in. And I saw it with Jamar, saw it a little bit with Tyler. Whenever you hear we've got to stop shooting ourselves in the foot, we've got to stop with the mistakes, we all have to get on the same page.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're saying something there. I don't know if you got that same sense, that same vibe, but that's just that was my takeaway. And certainly you already mentioned Jamar hasn't had a lot of downfield shots, and he kept talking about, we need to take shots downfield. However, by hook or by crook, we got to get the ball downfield. I got to get, my shots downfield to start making big plays. Did you get that sense?
I did. I heard nothing that surprised me. I think you were going to get what you were going to get after a team lost its second game in a row to open the season. I think, I think, like I say, they're so talented on offense that to not be able to break out, those guys are they're gonna be pissed.
Yeah, I think,
I was also struck by the fact that, as opposed to years past, like the first couple of, Zach's first couple of teams, nobody was hiding from you. All the, Jamar stood in front of his locker. Tyler stood in front of his locker. Mixon stood in front of his locker. Burrow went to the podium. Nobody was ducking and dodging, and that struck me a little bit too. Was so I think that was interesting too, and I think that's why they're going to work their way out of this thing, because I think we've all said this. Trags, the locker room is pretty good. It is a very good locker room.
I love covering the locker room. I agree.
And that's the thing that struck me. I guess I was kind of, I've been in the locker room where there were guys screaming that they want the ball. So, or pointing at coaches, you know what I mean? So I think that they're a long way from that. Geez, the Browns have already had a players only meeting, for God's sakes. That doesn't usually happen until October.
I don't think that's a good sign, because
no, and these guys are not going to have a. I was talking to Dave. That's another thing that struck me, and I wrote about this, but it's not on Monday. You had kind of people are going nuts, and there's two parts of this job. There's the outside, and there's the inside. And outside at 0-2, the Bastille is being stormed. There's chaos in the streets, Inside, it can be like that. But I noticed that there was kind of two oases of calm. DJ Reader on defense and Ted Karras on offense. Solid veterans, guys have been around. Obviously, there's urgency. They're not happy, but, DJ Reader was on it. Yeah, DJ Reader was on a team that was 0-3 and made the playoffs. Teddy Karras was in the 28-3 game. So, yeah, it was kind of interesting to see the reaction on Sunday and Monday. I thought it was indicative of a team that has been to the big game.
So, and I definitely am of the belief, Butch, that talent rises. It just eventually does. If you believe in the talent, if you give the talent time, and I'm not saying that this Bengal team can't rise to the challenge. It's just that I would like to see them take the bull by the horns and really dominate at the line of scrimmage. Real quick on the defense, because we haven't really talked about the defense. A couple of things. They've created one turnover in 2 games. That's got to change. And Lord knows they've been trying. I think it was Lou Anarumo said that Trey Hendrickson came up to him one time after a Steeler possession in week 1 and said, I did everything I possibly could. I had punched the ball, hit the ball flush with my hand, punching it, and it wouldn't come out. So they
I
haven't really.
don't know how Trubisky held on. 99 out of 100 times, the quarterback loses that ball.
Right.
I don't know. That was 99 out of 100 times. But yeah, no, you're right. They got to get him, and that was the difference. That was the difference in the playoffs.
Yes,
Was
they
their
were able
turnovers.
to correct. And the other thing is they've got to get to the quarterback. They have 2 sacks and 10 quarterback hits in total over 2 games. They've got to get more pressure on the opposing quarterback, make them feel the way Burrow feels a little bit, and start turning. That's how you turn the tide in these games, is you start making the other team feel uncomfortable. And the Bengals were able to do that in the second half of last year. They certainly were able to do that in the playoffs. And I think until they get back to that defensively, they're not going to be as easily able to dictate the tempo, because I think a lot of people came into this season thinking the Bengals could dictate tempo purely by their offense, and that's not the case.
Well, this defense is going to get turnovers because they have. And I think I do believe in that, where they do come in bunches. I know it's a cliche, but the reason it's a cliche is because it's true.
True, right.
Right. So, like I said, there's going to be a bounce or something that, but it's just a matter of when. But I think defensively, I think they've been as advertised. I know they gave up too early,
Too
maybe
early
the most
drives in
disappointing
Dallas.
thing was how Dallas had done nothing in the opener, and then they came out and scored 2 times. The first 2 times they had it with a backup quarterback. But bottom line is they held them to 17. I mean, they played well enough to win the game. Much, better than that. They played, and they played good enough to win on Sunday too. I mean, Sunday they got against Dallas in Dallas. They got gouged a little bit early in the run game, and I count that 47-yarder. Really, it went down as a pass, but that was kind of a
Correct.
That was kind of a jet sweep, really, And they shut it down. They shut down already, because that was, that Dallas wanted to pound the ball, and they couldn't, And I thought that was, that's a good defense, because that could have been an abyss if they kept giving it to Zeke and Pollard and they couldn't stop them. That had all the aroma of a 24, 10 game if the defense doesn't step up. And it did, and they had to throw, and they couldn't score. So I mean, I thought the defense is advertised. Chidobe Awuzie, best corner, nobody knows. DJ Reader, best nose tackle, nobody knows.
Yep.
Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, best linebacker tandem, nobody knows. These guys can play.
I am with you 1,000% on all of that, Butch. It's just that I think the Bengals defense needs to come up with 1 or 2 big plays to give them the sense of, yes, we're playing very well, but we can also impact a game and be game changers. And until they get those turnovers, maybe put some points on the board defensively, which I thought they'd be able to do against these first 2 teams. They haven't. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say it was only 17 games last year. There were only 5 games they had a sack or less in 5 games. They've already had 2, which is kind of that's against the trend. And I think that's probably the big stat that's got to get reversed: is sacks for, sacks against.
Yep.
But I mean, we've been, that's how, we've been talking about turnovers, and it's how do you get turnovers? Because turnovers, to me, everybody knows it's the biggest stat in football. That's why it was a travesty that Kenny Riley has gone 40 years without getting into the finals, voting in the Hall of Fame. It's a game of turnovers, and this was the 5th greatest turnover guy of all time. Yes. You know what I mean? Turnovers are key. It's how do you get them, obviously. And how do you get them? You play fast. You have a lead. You take some chances. You get a bounce.
Right.
And I just think, once they're up 10-3 instead of down 10-3, hey, let's go old school. let's go old school, Trags. Let's take the ball.
Well, if only I could get on the field and have something to do with it, Butch. All I can do is pen my stories based on what I see, and that's what I love doing.
You would be a perfect game captain for Coach Taylor. I think Coach Taylor does a great job managing this team. I think Zach does a really good job with managing his club, and one of them is, coming up with game captains, and
Yes.
I think he really, you would be a great one. Obviously, you'd be a game captain for the New England game.
Of course.
But I think, but no, I think you'd be a good game captain. I think Thursday night for the Ring of Honor game, because you grew up in Cincy and is now covering the team. But,
and I am a huge Isaac Curtis fan. Huge.
There you go.
So
I think Coach would probably make it a game captain. But it'll be interesting. It's interesting to see. I do think the coin toss is just interesting, because I bet $1 Brian and Zach talked about it, because remember I thought Zach and Brian, by the way, I think they're very open. I think they're very good interviews. I think particularly
yes, they're honest.
I mean, they're really,
I agree.
They're really smart guys, and they talked about everything in those 20 minutes before Zach came downstairs to talk to the media. I bet they talked about that too, but I think, this is a new era. This is a new wave. I think Zach's going to talk to his team. This is a player's generation, and I think Zach and Brian have a really good feel for that.
Yes.
Dan Pitcher, the quarterback's coach, and they know what these guys are thinking, and they know what these guys want. And I think that will be, and I think that's good, because I think, and Burrow has talked about this before, that he's got a pretty good channel to what's going on.
Well, we got to wrap it up, Butch. It has been a pleasure to talk with you. It's been a pleasure reminiscing, looking back on going to a Red Sox-Reds game with you, which was memorable to say the very least. Be sure to follow Geoff Hobson on Twitter at Geoff Hobson, CIN, all one word. That's GeoffHobson, CIN. There you go. And be sure to follow his great work on Bengals.com. Butch, thank you.
Trags, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to, like I said in my post on Facebook, here's a guy that grew up in Cincinnati, covered the Boston sports team like Mike Haynes, and came back home where he belongs.
Thanks, Butch.
Thanks, Trags.